Hey everyone, Bryant here, and we're going to talk about my weekend. If you've been living underneath a rock, my team won the Star City Game Team Open trophy, and I wasn't exactly happy with my list, but we're going to talk about what I was playing the week prior, what I played in the Open, and where I see the deck moving forward. We're also going to talk about the event itself, so let's dive in. So first, we're going to talk about the list that I was playing. So this is what I was calling 4.7, and I was having a lot of success with it. My win percentage was, I'll look it up really quick. Sorry, 76% over 43 matches. Hot damn! And then I started trying out some other things because this list was running well, but I wasn't completely sold on Pulverize. So in my next list, you'll notice there's no Pulverize. And that's because these Blood Moon decks that were very popular in the old format have started to die out a little bit. So, sorry to our friend Zach Turgeon, but I don't know if I see Blood Moon being all that successful in the new format, with decks like Stoneblade playing tons of basics on top of Miracles. And other decks are now trying to play fairer mana bases due to Rug Delver being popular in the format. So you're seeing more basics more now than ever. Decks are trying to be less greedy, so I do think the Blood Moon decks are a little bit worse. So I was looking for an alternative to Pulverize. I was trying Telemann Performance. So cut Telemann Performance, don't like it. The online metagame is a lot more unfair, and I think online Telemann Performance is fine. But even then, I think it's now not, and I'm about to explain why. But in paper, there's always more fair decks than unfair decks, and the slot just isn't worth it. So for the event, I decided I didn't want any cards devoted to unfair decks, so I also ran no Surgical Extraction. But with Telemann Performance, it's used against lands, Storm, Sneak and Show, Reanimator. Well, lands boards in a Tireless Tracker. Storm has Xanded Swarm, or sometimes they have cards like Dark Confidant. And Sneak and Show, some lists have recently been playing Simian Spirit Guide, but now they have this new Arcane Artisan, making it just not reliable. Like, you don't want to hit a Spirit Guide or Artisan. Like, it just feels awful. And then Red-Black Reanimator has Chancellor the Annex that you don't want to hit. So every deck has this flaw to Telemann Performance. There's no reason to play it. So that's where I'm at with that card, and I don't think Pulverize is worth it. So I do think that Pulverize could come back around, but you either need to... Two things need to happen. One, a Chalice deck needs to rise. And if it's going to be Dragon Stompy, you don't need to make any changes. If it's a Chalice deck like Eldrazi that rises, you have to change your deck in order to support Pulverize. So you have to run a 14th land, and it has to be a red land. So that's where I think that card needs to go, where the format needs to go if that card is playable. Sorry, I'm stumbling in my words a little bit, but you know what I mean. Alright, so the other changes. Surgical Extraction. This card is so good in theory, terrible in practice. So it doesn't actually increase your win percentage that much against Red-Black Reanimator, because one, it's not a good matchup. Two, even if you have it, they could have Chancellor. And three, even if you cast it, you're not guaranteed to win the game. So I was talking about it with some other Storm aficionados, and we decided it's just not worth it. Everyone's moving off it, at least that plays Storm that I know. It's just not worth the slots, even though it is high impact. You'd rather see other high impact cards in its place. So that's where we left, but where are we going? So when I was trying other things, one thing was fairly certain. Counterbalance is back. So Miracles decks are upping their number of counterbalances from 2 to 3. Not all of them, but I've noticed it in some lists. And it's because of the rise of Rug Delver. The card's very good against Rug Delver, and I kept on losing to main deck counterbalances. I've even faced some people that had a full playset, so I don't think those people are doing well because the card's not that good as a whole, but 2 to 3 seems to be where people are settling on, more towards 2 than 3, but there are people with 3. So I kept on losing to main deck counterbalances, which was a little frustrating. And I was talking to some others. We noticed how great Xanad Swarm is in the metagame. So we switched off Xanad Swarm. Or switched to Xanad Swarm. And with doing that, we obviously want Abrupt Decay. So the problem is, how do you fit in green? And that's where I ended up with my Star City Games list. So here's what I ended up running. It was fine. The list wasn't bad. It was fine. My biggest complaint with the list is that with 2 Empty the Warrens, I had a number of matches where I resolved ad nauseum from 10 to 12, which with the Epic Storm, I feel comfortable resolving ad nauseum from 10 to 12. Like, I don't expect to win every game, but I expect to win more than 50%. 2 empties, it was just terrible. Like, I didn't feel confident with ad nauseum with anything lower than 15 life, and that's not where I want to be. I did have a game or two where the extra empty was good. I just don't think it was worth our primary engine being worse. But that was part of the sacrifice of adding green. But where's the Bayou? It's not in our sideboard. I've had like 3 messages of people asking me this. If it's not in the sideboard, guess where it's at? The main deck. So, Bayou. That's where the Bayou is. Stop asking me. Please. So we were trying to find room to fit everything we wanted. We knew we wanted 4 copies of Empty the Warrens. We wanted Xanad Swarm. We wanted Abrupt Decay. We need Bayou. So you'll notice Preordain is gone. So that became Bayou. 14 lands, 12 moxes. 14 lands was great. 12 moxes, or 12 artifacts was great. I don't see that changing as long as I'm running green. If I cut green, I could go back down to 13, but I actually kind of liked having a 14th land. It came up a few times. I wouldn't cut Chrome Mox in order to add a 14th, but I could see 1 Preordain. But we'll get to that in a moment. So, 14 lands, 2 empties. We have our 2 Xanadar, 2 Decay, 2 Echoing Truth, 2 Chain of Vapor. It has everything I like about the list, but wait, it has Massacre. So, one thing I was finding was I was losing to Death and Taxes a lot. Way more than I was comfortable with. I was 7-7. 14 matches, I was at 50%. Well, why is that? I think the reason is the loss of Gitaxian Probe hurts how the deck plays. And, you know, it's not anything that nobody could have guessed. Gitaxian Probe is an incredibly powerful card, and I think this is the one matchup where information is key. So you will see that you would cast Gitaxian Probe, and you see Thalia, some other garbage, who cares? Deck sucks. I'm joking, of course, but, like, you get the gist. So from there, you decide if you want to cast a discard spell, a cantrip, and then you make an educated decision that puts you ahead for turn 2. That's typically how games played out. Without having that free information, sometimes you'll cast Dress on turn 1, take an equipment or an Aether Vial, or even nothing, and then your opponent would then go Plains, Mother of Ruins, whatever, and that would set you behind. And then on turn 2, you're just praying for your cantrip to get you there. Where with Probe, you'll see, hey, I need to win on turn 2 before Thalia comes down. I'm going to cast Ponder off this basic island, and then next turn, hopefully cast Brainstorm into this, and then kill them. Or now you're essentially losing a full turn, which gives Death and Taxes just enough time to catch up, which brings in Massacre. So, before I jump and show you the list that I plan on playing, I want to go through my tournament a little bit. And I actually used Massacre a few times, so I'm going to bring up my spreadsheet and we're going to talk about my matchups. I didn't take notes, so all of this is from memory. Alright, so here is the spreadsheet. And Lucas was my first opponent on burn. These were essentially 9 games almost. I lost the die roll. Lucas played a Swift Spear, attacked me. I also mulliganed, as you can see by the one indicated here. And then I ended up keeping a hand that was Basic Swamp, Bayou, Infernal Tutor, Dark Ritual. How many is that? Dark Ritual, I think it was. And my hand didn't really do anything, but I was like, okay, this is fine. Whatever. Good enough on 6. It turns out Lucas was playing Burn, so it was a little awkward. No red source for empty, and I really needed a Lion's Eye Diamond in order to do anything meaningful. On turn 2, he played Lava Spike, Chain You, Swing, put you to 10. So I draw and it's ad nauseum. Great. That's like the sort of draw we needed. So I just tap my swamp. I play Ritual ad nauseum. And my first couple cards are Burning Wish, Infernal Tutor, Empty the Warrens. Didn't win that game. So you'll see that was the start of me disliking the second empty. Game 2, I keep a hand that's a discard spell, Duress, Chain of Vapor, 2 lands, Lion's Eye Diamond, and a Lotus Petal, I think. Maybe there was another spell that wasn't a business spell. I end up keeping that, and I Duress, take a random spell, doesn't matter. He doesn't have Eidolon. Plays Swift Spear. I draw, it's a land, I play another land. He attacks. This goes on. I end up bouncing his Swift Spear in order to stay ahead, because I drew a second bounce spell. But I kept the Chain of Vapor because I knew that it could be more useful if I happen to draw a Storm spell. So I draw Ponder, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to cast everything. So I play all my artifact mana, I play my land, all this good stuff. But being so happy that I actually drew a piece of business, I got a little bit ahead of myself. So what I should have done was I should have floated mana off my lands, Chain of Vapored all my stuff, replay everything, and then Ponder, sacrifice everything. So that would have been the right thing to do, but I didn't do that. So instead, what I do is I just jam Ponder, I look at land, Ritual, Brainstorm, and then it's better to shuffle here because if you're going to see a random third card, it's better to Ponder in case you draw another cantrip as the third card and you'll see something new. So I shuffle, and it's Empty the Warrens. I empty the Warrens for 18, and my opponent is at 18. But they have that blocker. So I'm at 7 now. They play the blocker, they suspend Rift Bolt, they pass. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not dead, but if I can draw a discard spell, maybe I'll be fine, or even a bounce spell. A bounce spell wins the game. So I draw, and it's Burning Wish, which I can't cast. I don't think that's right. It wasn't Burning Wish. It was something that just like wasn't good in this scenario. So I attack, leaving 3 behind, and they drop down to their life total, whatever. They untap, they double bolt me, I lose. So that happened. Luckily, my teammates were nice enough to carry me, and we were 1-0. Round 2, Michael McKinney. Michael is actually from the Syracuse area. He lives a little bit farther out, but we know each other. We saw each other earlier on in the day, and he told me that he was still playing 4-color Control with Leovold, which was really awkward when we got paired, but at least we knew what each other were playing. I end up dressing him, and I see a Chandra and a Punishing Fire and a Grover the Burn Willows with a Leovold. So he's playing like a heavy splash for the green, and it's not a super interesting match, to be honest. I kind of just crushed him. I used Empty the Warrens both games. I decided not to board in the extra empty in the sideboard in game 2, and then I actually ended up Burning Wishing for both of the sideboard Empty the Warrens. So that was a little bit interesting in the fact that like I made a weird judgment call on not wanting to board into too many extra sweepers, and then it paid off. In the almost opposite direction, that I ended up overusing my Empty the Warrens, and then he didn't have a sweeper, but because I didn't want to, it ended up working. It was just like kind of weird. So Josh Halloran, I play every week at my local. I like to joke with Josh because he's one of the luckiest guys I've ever met when it comes to beating me. Like, I've died turn 1 so many times to him going turn 1, show and tell, Emrakul, and then me trying to kill him and him having forced blue card with his turn 1 Emrakul. It's happened at least 3 times. So, I call Josh like the luckiest guy I've ever met. I drove him there, and he was giving me some crap on the way there, so I said, if you beat me, I'm going to leave you here. So we get paired in the future, and we have a 30-minute game 1 that I win at 1 life with a Past in Flames with 6 lands in play. So through that game, I fought through a main deck Flusterstorm, a main deck Counterspell, 2 Snapcaster Mages, double Force of Will, and it was just an incredible game. I emptied twice, and maybe once. I think it was just once. Is just to stay alive with blockers. So I ended up getting him to Flusterstorm a Burning Wish, and then on the same turn, I have the last card on my hand is Infernal Tutor. I Infernal Tutor for another Burning Wish, but I have to pass the turn. So he swings, he puts me down to 1 life, and I have now outs of 2 Rite of Flames, 4 Dark Rituals, and 4 Lion's Eye Diamonds. Those are my outs. And if I draw a cantrip, I can cantrip into Lion's Eye Diamond or Rite of Flame, but Dark Ritual will no longer cut it. So I draw, and it's Rite of Flame, and I kill him. And it was an insane game, but right after I kill him, both my teammates had just finished losing. So we didn't get to play any more games. It was an incredible game, though. I wish that one was on camera, because it was just insane. It was probably like one of the coolest games I played on the day. But I guess I beat Josh 1-0. So Steven's matchup wasn't super interesting. I won the die roll. I had a turn. I opened up Ad Nauseam. I also opened up 2 lands, Rite of Flame, Dark Ritual. I crushed him game 1. Game 2, I was able to keep a hand that I wouldn't have kept otherwise. So it was double Burning Wish, 3 lands, a Ponder, and a Dark Ritual. So when you have Massacre in your deck, you're able to keep some hands in the draw that you normally wouldn't keep. I felt like this hand wasn't great, but I wanted to see how Massacre would play out. So he goes land go. I draw Thoughtseize. I Thoughtseize him. I take his Thalia, but I see a Canonist. So he plays Canonist, and I draw a bounce spell. I'm like, okay. So I'm still not really close to winning, so I'm just going to play out my land, whatever. And then he starts playing out equipment. I'm like, okay, this is weird. But I'm going to see what happens. So I draw another bounce spell. So he goes to equip, I bounce it. He plays a Vial and passes. I draw another land, I play it, I pass. He replays Canonist. And I'm still not able to win. But even if I was able to draw Mana Source that turn, that wasn't a land, I could empty, but then he could just equip his Canonist to his Jit, and I lose. So I'm not really too thrilled on the empty plan right now. And from there, he ticks it up, and I end up bouncing it again, and then I draw my 3rd bounce spell. I'm like, oh, this is really weird. So I proactively Burning Wish for Massacre, because he's getting his Vial up to 2. So he just says go, knowing that he has Vial on 2, and I can't win if he has Canonist in hand. So I bounce the Vial on his end step. And then he Vials in Canonist, I untap, I Massacre him. Cool. But I actually drew another Dark Ritual that turn, so I empty for 10. It's either 10 or 12, I want to say it's 10. And from there, I'm feeling pretty good. So Steven draws, looks at his draw, looks at the board. He does a little bit of counting, and then goes, I think this will do, and plays Brightling. I'm like, oh crap. So not only does he have Brightling to gain life, he has a Jit in play. And then he equips, and then he equips a Sword of Fire Ice the next turn, and I'm just quickly out of the game. So we lost the Brightling, it happens. Game 3, I open up, and it's Lotus Petal, Rite of Flame, double LED, Burning Wish, Abrupt Decay, and empty. I'm like, okay, as long as he doesn't have Surgical or Fairy Macabre, I can go all in into empty. So I actually took a riskier line than I needed to, and I realized it after, but I went Dark Petition empty where he could have gotten me. It might have been better to just play everything out into empty the warrant. So Lotus Petal, Rite of Flame, LED, Burning Wish, empty would be 12 goblins. But for some reason, I was really worried about him going turn 1 Mom into turn 2 Stoneforge and that not being enough. So it's a judgment call. It's not necessarily a wrong play, but I went Dark Petition empty. But that line loses to Macabre or Surgical. Anyway, I ended up with an extra couple goblins, and I ended up winning. Feel free to write in the comments which line you think is right. I'm still not entirely sure one's better than the other, but it's interesting to hear what people think. So my next round is against Oliver Tomako, and he's on Infect. That will later this week be uploaded to the website because it was on camera, so I'm not really going to talk about it. But it's kind of interesting, and I will commentate on this. I don't think the commentators really knew what the matchup was about because they kept on talking about how I was an empty deck and how I had to kill with Empty the Warrens, and Empty the Warrens isn't good against Infect, and all this other stuff, and I just found it to be a little strange. I actually did end up using Empty in Game 1 because I was mulligan and kind of like forced into that line, but in general, I don't really think I agree with their commentating. My next round was against Rug Delver, and the guy was pretty young. I want to say he looked like he was like 16 years old. He didn't have a lot of experience. But he tapped out a lot, which gave me some windows. Like, he tapped out once with Stifle Spell Snare in hand, and I just emptied him. And then the next turn he tapped out to play a blocker, and I emptied him again. So, inexperience will catch you. Just kind of happens. Max Brown. This is my second time in the Omnitel versus Storm matchup with Max Brown versus Bryant Cook. We both love Burning Wish. We were both playing the Burning Wish versions. Xanadu single-handedly won me a game this round. It was great. I actually had to win Game 3 with Empty the Warrens because I couldn't do anything else, so I thought that was sort of interesting. Jeff White, you might recognize him better as his Moto screen name of Pokimoki. So I faced him, and it was really weird. I kept a hand where if I drew a black card or a black producing land, I had a turn 1 with a Thoughtseize. But instead I drew something that wasn't those, and I ended up deciding to play it safe, and I cast a Thoughtseize, and he had Force of Will and Counterbalance. So I end up taking the Counterbalance, I believe, and then he... Wait, no, I took Forcible, and then because he had Enlightened Tutor in hand, and I figured he could just get another Counterbalance, so he placed Counterbalance on turn 2, and I think part of my logic was... No, because I was on the draw. But anyway, so he placed Counterbalance on turn 2, so I was priced into doing that. And I couldn't empty, which was my backup plan, but I can't do that because if he just gets explosives, I lose my Chrome Mox, and I don't have any lands. So he plays Counterbalance, and we get into this weird game where I end up with Ovion's Eye Diamond in play after he uses his Enlightened Tutor for Rest in Peace and a Lotus Petal. And he finally reveals a 0 because I've been casting dirtily spells into his Counterbalance, but he reveals back-to-back 0s. And then, so I know that he's holding lands in his hand plus 1 unknown. And I go to Ritual, and he Flusterstorms it. I'm like, okay, the coast is definitely clear now, because he revealed another 0. So I know that he's got 2 lands in hand and a 0 on top. So I'm like, okay, next turn I'm going to try to empty. And I play Rite of Flame. He reveals another land that isn't a fetch land. So he's just drawn like nothing but lands, I want to say. And maybe it wasn't a land, maybe it was something else. But it was a card that didn't stop me from winning. So I end up playing Empty the Warrens for like 8 goblins, and I just attack him for 3 turns. He never draws anything of relevance, and I end up winning. It was just like kind of a crappy game. He ended up with double Counterbalance in play, but like couldn't do anything. It was just like very strange. Game 2, I opened up with double land, double LED, Ritual, Infernal Tutor, and like Abrupt Decays. And I draw a Ponder for turn, and I'm like, I decide that I don't want to just jam it, and I want to wait to find a discard spell. So he ends up playing like a turn 2 Canonist, and I decay it, and then he plays like a Counterbalance, and I decay it. And no, that must not have been it. I had a Brainstorm. I didn't have an Infernal Tutor. So the issue was that I never found a business spell, and I ended up brainstorm locking myself, and I have to like sit there through it, and it's really strange. But in the meantime, I have a ton of discard, so I start firing off all my discard, and he takes a turn where he decides to tap out, and then that exact turn, I draw Burning Wish, and he had clicked me the turn earlier, and I had nothing. So he decides to tap out, and to just bid him that I just happened to draw Burning Wish that turn, and I ended up getting there. Sorry, I didn't take notes, so it's a little foggy. I normally take a lot of notes, but with team events, you're really trying to help your teammates in your downtime rather than take notes, so I focused on trying to win the tournament rather than taking notes. Michael Boland, I had a super cool play this round. Game 1, I got stifled, which kind of shocked me, because I thought he was on just Stoneblade. He had basic Plains, basic Island, and then I double fetched and asked him if it was okay to shortcut, and he said, I'm going to stifle you. And I was like, oh. Well, that made things a little awkward, because then I couldn't ad nauseum. But I then played Rite of Flame Ritual, and I guess he had Daze Pierce in hand and decided not to use them because he wanted to get me. And then I played LED ad nauseum from my hand, and then made 6 mana. And then those cards were just dead. And then game 2, we both mulliganed to 6. He keeps a hand of Delver Secrets, 2 lands, Pyroblast, and Rest in Peace. And he plays the 2 Delvers pretty quickly. They flip, and then he plays Rest in Peace. I draw, and it's a second Burning Wish, so I just Burning Wish for Massacre and kill both of his flip Delvers. And that bought me so much time that I could empty for 10, like 2 turns later, and it was just good enough. So that ended up winning me the round. Day 2, Rex Dillon. So I actually get deck check for my second time. And what was strange to me is they waited until after we presented and we were about to draw our cards. Like, we had already like grabbed our decks to go place out our hand. And that's when they stopped us. And I felt like that was a little strange. And I've always thought that judges had to stop you when you presented, not after you shuffled, not when you were about to lay out your deck. So like, I thought about going up to the head judge and saying something, because that just seemed like very strange to me, but it wasn't worth like picking a fight over. If you know the actual answer on that, feel free to let me know. But like, that was just like really strange to me. So our game 1, I believe that I was on the draw, and they mulliganed. They played a turn 2 Stoneforge. Unfortunately for them, I opened up with ad nauseum, and I just needed to make a second land drop so I could go Ritual, land, and then play a Crow Mox and then get them. Game 2, they mulliganed a bunch, and I just had a turn 1. Maybe that wasn't it. No, I did have a turn 1. I'm just looking at the wrong line. I had a turn 1 empty for a crap load, and that was just good enough. So Nick Costello, we actually sat across from his team for the player meeting. I had played him on Modern in the previous team event that we were both at in Philly. He was on Valcut and I was on Modern Storm. I turn 3'd him without a bear in play. I had this really cool win where I went Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual Splice, Desperate Ritual Splice, Manamorphose, Past in Flames. I ended up just playing a ton of spells into a Grape Shot for 18, which was just good enough. It was like a super cool game, but that's how we remember each other. So he knew I was on Storm, and I had hawked him one round and saw that he was playing Skill and Show. So we knew what each other were on. I kept a hand with a lot of discard game 1, and I kind of just like wrecked him. And then game 2, he didn't really keep a good hand. Oh, it's worth noting that game 1, he put an Omniscience in a play but couldn't kill me. And then I killed him because of all the discard I played. And then game 2, he mulliganed a bunch and I just won. So, nothing too exciting there. My match against Zach is on camera. I kind of just drew poorly this round. I don't really have any excuse. Sometimes your deck has a fail rate. It's what happened in my first round against Burn. Sometimes you get wrecked. Bobby Huang. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about this. I emptied him after a bunch of discard spells game 1. Game 2, I had one of the classic Ponder into Ad Nauseam, leave it on top. And then next turn, play a discard spell, Lion's Eye Diamond, another Mana Source Ritual, Ponder, Crack, Ad Nauseam, kill you. Pretty easy work of him. I think the coolest thing about that round was that my teammate Jake single-handedly beat Black-Red. No, it wasn't Black-Red. It was the Spirits deck with Lyra that round. No, I was right the first time. It was Black-Red. Zek's teammate was Clay Spicklemeyer, and he was on Black-Red. That's what happened that round. But he played Lyra, and that just stone cold nutted his opponent's deck, and it ended up winning us the round. That was the first time it happened. It happened twice. It happened on camera again later on in the day, and it was just super, super sweet. Lyra was definitely worth its money. So the next round, we were locked in the top 8 at this point, but we wanted to make sure we were locked in for the top seed. We weren't trying to dream crush Noah. Noah's a friend of mine, but we wanted to make sure we got the first seed. So we played it out, and his team 3-0'd us. I drew really poor against Noah. It was probably my worst draws on the weekend. I just didn't do anything any of the games, and he had a Bomat Courier with, I think, 10 cards under it at one point. So that was pretty cool. But my deck just, like, did nothing. The games weren't even particularly close. So, exciting stuff. My third loss. Dan Jessup. I lost game 1, and at this point I was feeling really nervous because Jake had also lost game 1. And then our standard player... Oh, which I forgot to mention. We had our teammate ditch us Wednesday night for standard. We had to find a new person. I knew Matt because he lives in the next town over, and he had some success at GP Pit. He went 5-4 day 1. I wasn't having a lot of confidence in him for game 2 or for day 2. But he crushed day 2. Overall, he went 7-1, including top 8. So he just turned it on, and really impressed me day 2. He definitely did some carrying, but overall, I had the best record on the team, and then Jake, and then him. But it was a good team effort day 2 because I definitely lost in top 4 to Bob. But I don't know. I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But he won his match. And then Jake and I were down. So I was feeling really nervous. I go into game 2, I mulligan on the play. And my opening hand is Burning Wish, Red Flame, Dark Ritual, Fetch Land. Like, okay. And I scry another Burning Wish to the bottom. I think it was actually the third Burning Wish. So I passed the turn and... Excuse me, I'm getting a little parched. Dan Jessup fetches and plays Delver. I draw a Xanad Swarm. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to jam this Xanad Swarm. So I fetch, I get by you, I put Xanad Swarm into play. It resolved. I could not believe it. He didn't have Force or Daze. Like, the odds of that happening are super low. It's like sub 35%. Xanad Swarm resolved, but then he landed me, so I have no mana sources. So Delver Secrets attacks me a couple times, and I then draw a blue source finally, so I attack, I brainstorm, and it gives me enough so that I can Ad Nauseam. I think I Ad Nauseam or brainstormed into like another land, a Lotus Petal, and Ad Nauseam. So I put some stuff back. He doesn't wasteland me. I go to 10 or like 9 or something, and from there, I think it was 10. And then next turn, or on his turn, I go to 10. I untap and I cast an Ad Nauseam from 10 life with 3 Empty the Warrens in my deck. It was just like the absolute best Ad Nauseam I had on the day, and I kill him. So that was pretty cool. Game 3, Dan turns to his opponents, or to his teammates, and he's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to keep this or not. And then he ultimately decides to. His teammates confirm. He goes Lango. I draw. My hand at this point, I just drew a third Chromox. So it's Chromox, empty, Badlands, Dark Ritual, Duress Thoughtseize. So I actually wanted a black card there so I could imprint Ritual, or imprint discard spell, Ritual, empty, blah blah blah. So instead I go Chromox, imprint Duress. Chromox. Imprint, Thoughtseize, Chromox. So Dan tanks, and then he spell pierces. I'm like, okay. Dark Ritual. So he tanks again and he forces it. So at this point my hand is literally just Badlands empty. Pass the turn. He goes land go. Okay, so he kept the hand without a threat, which is pretty clear. So I draw its Rite of Flame, I pass. He draws, he plays a land, passes. I draw Burning Wish, pass. He draws, it's finally a creature, he plays the creature. I draw its Rite of Flame. So I go Rite of Flame. He lets it resolve. I Rite of Flame again. And he brainstorms in response, tapping out. So I remember this because he didn't have any available mana, so he might have missed his third land drop, I don't remember. But he dazes the Rite of Flame, and I guess I'm very quick to pay because he makes a comment about it. He's like, oh, fuck. I'm like, okay. And then he goes, okay. And then I empty for 8. And at this point, we start racing back and forth, and he almost stabilizes, but empty's good enough to get there. And he tells me about his keep at the end. He kept, like, just 5 interaction spells and then 2 lands. And couldn't really get anything going by the time that I was able to win. So I end up winning as Jake is about to lose to their teammate Frank Scarron on Affinity. So like that was a must-win game for us, and fortunately we got there. Bob Huang, you'll see that I get crushed on camera, which is a little weird because once again the commentators are all about how Empty the Warrens isn't good in this matchup, but I'm an empty deck, so they think that Bob is a little favored. And I just don't really agree with their commentary. Like, I don't think they had a strong grasp of how the deck works, but, like, not everyone is a Legacy expert, so I don't really expect them to. Yeah. And then game 3, I had to read Arcane, whatever the fuck it's called, twice, because I didn't realize it drew a card. I thought it just discarded a card and made a copy, so I was a little shocked when Bob activated it and drew a card. I was like, oh, well, that just made your odds of finding a blue card much higher, so I messed up on that, but, like, regardless, it was the correct play there to jam ad nauseum anyway because it wasn't getting any better. So if I knew about the draw or not was irrelevant because it was correct to jam, and I stand by that. So I ended up losing, but my teammates picked me up. We see Lyra crush again on camera, and then my black-red teammate won pretty quickly. So I got carried to the finals. And then we are off camera, I believe, for the first game. They decide to feature my standard player. And then they switch over as I'm about to start game 2, I believe, where we had both mulliganed and I get thrashed. So we're going into game 3. My opening hand was actually fine, and I've had a number of people message me commenting about how I kept such a trash hand. My opening hand was like Scalding Tarn, Delta, Ponder, Brainstorm, Empty the Warrens, like Lion's Eye Diamond, which is fine. Or at least it was something similar to that. And I played, I fetch up Basic Island, I play Ponder, and it's garbage, and I shuffle, and I play Brainstorm, and it's like triple business spell, and it's just not good, so I end up shuffling a couple of them away. And then I want to say I played another Brainstorm, and it was just like war business, and I couldn't find mana. So, like, my hand at this point is just, like, triple Empty the Warrens, Thoughtseize, land, Lotus Petal, and, like, a Lion's Eye Diamond, I want to say. I don't remember exactly. But I end up emptying for 4 against his no lands, Wasteland, Force. Or, actually, discarded Force. But then he double Surgicals and takes my empty, so I end up attacking it for a couple turns. He plays a Delver, doesn't block, and then it flips. And it gets to the point where he has 2 flip Delvers, 2 lightning bolts, and he can fetch down to 3, double bolt, and then we're like stuck in this weird standoff. Instead, he decides to attack, which is fine if he didn't fetch himself down to 3. He could have left 1 back and then double bolted and been fine. But he forgot about the life point, and then he attacked, which put him just dead to my crackback because he could bolt 1, take 3, and be exactly lethally dead. So he had cast Brainstorm on the previous turn, putting back Spell Snare, and then keeping Double Daze. So for my turn, before I attack for 4 and kill him, I actually drew Brainstorm. So my hand at this point is Chromox, Chromox ad nauseum. Okay, so I have 3 cards and a Brainstorm. So I look at the top 3. It's Bloodstained Mire, Burning Wish, Land. So I would put back the Chromox and the extra land. I would play Chromox, imprint ad nauseum, fetch up my Badlands, and then cast Burning Wish. In response, crack Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 red. I had enough to pay for double days and then Grape Shot him. So my opponent pretty much just denied me a Grape Shot kill on camera and made the finals way less exciting because he miscounted. Which kind of sucks because it was a little deflating to win like that. And it would have been super cool to win with Grape Shot, but my second trophy is my second trophy. Brags on brags. And that's the tournament. Overall, I didn't feel like the second empty won me too many games. It might have won me 2 games on the day, but I don't know if it was really needed. Which brings me to where we're going now. So, it's not actually 61 cards, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So, we're going to keep the Bayou in the main, because I want to still play green, and I want as many sideboard cards as I can actually get. So, what about the second empty slot? Well, that's going to be Preordain or Cabal Therapy. I'm not sure which is better. I'm going to test both. I don't really have a preference, so I'm going to test both, see what I like. You're welcome to test them as well. Put feedback in the comments on which you like more. They're both fine. So the Preordain is an extra business spell, which will help. Because there are games sometimes where you just sit there durdling and not doing anything. It happens. It happened in my game 1 against Bob in top 4. Where I just needed to find any action spell. I actually brainstormed back double empty at one point and then drew 1 again. So a discard spell would have been nice there, but so would have Preordained. So that scenario was a wash. But I'm not sure which slot I like more there. The Cabal Therapy is sweet because after an Empty the Warrens, you can Infernal Tutor for Therapy, and then use our classic synergy of Cabal Therapy, Flashback, Cabal Therapy, Wreck 'em. It's also good if Sneak and Show is one of the most popular decks in the format because discard is great against them. It's good against Miracles, which is a popular deck currently. It's also good against Rug Delver because after you add Nauseam, you can Therapy away Double Stifle. So it adds a little bit more utility. Preordain adds consistency. I don't have a preference. I think you should test both, see what you like more. So I did want to keep the 4th Empty the Warren, so we put that back in the board and we cut a Chain of Vapor. Which, I like having Chain of Vapor. I would add it again to the sideboard. I think with me casting Massacre 3 times in the open, once for I had a cool line where I used it for Exact Storm. I Burning Wish for Massacre just to cast it for free, and then Tendrils for Exact, which was pretty cool. I killed 2 Delvers, and then I used it to kill a Canonist. So I think it pulled its weight. I'm going to keep trying it, but I wish that there was room for a second Chain of Vapor, but unfortunately our sideboard's pretty packed. So that's where the list is currently. I don't really have a whole lot more to say on the subject. This is what I'm going to be testing for GP Richmond at the moment. Who knows, it could change. Shout out to Legacy Premier League. I'm going to be on there starting August 8th. I am in Playgroup 4, so I won't be on the first 3 weeks. But it's going to be pretty sweet. You should check it out. And I shared around a link earlier this week. You can find it in the Epic Storm Facebook group or the Epic Storm Twitter for donating. Julian Knob, Anurag Das, and Michael Danielson put a ton of work into this, and they are putting up some of the prizes, so is Card Hoarder. If you're a fan of Legacy Premier League or just the people in it, you should consider donating. It's going to, they're putting in so many hours of work. They built a website, they're organizing everything. Pay for content that you enjoy. I get nothing out of this, so it's not like anything matters to me. Like, I don't benefit from promoting them. You're just promoting great Legacy content that people do for the love of what they do. It's why I run the website. I don't get paid for running the website. In fact, the website's barely a break-even on the year after I pay for domain and hosting. I'm sure Julian does the same, so support your Legacy content creators. It's for a good cause. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and have a good night.